I'm Kesenya and welcome to another free astrology lesson. And today we're going to be looking at Uranus's transit through the 5th house and what it can actually bring us. Now, before we begin, and I'm doing this at the beginning of every one of these Uranus transit videos, I'm explaining what it looks like to have Uranus transit the whatever house it happens to be with whole sign astrology, which is the system of astrology that I use. So currently, and I'm recording this in early 2019, currently Uranus is sitting here in Aries. And it's at the final couple of degrees of Aries, about to move into Taurus, which it's going to do on the 3rd of March. And when it does that, it will begin its 7-year stay in Taurus. And so what we're looking at this point in time is wherever Taurus lies in your chart, that will be the house that Uranus, the planet Uranus, will be transiting for the next 7 years. But I want this video to apply to future situations as well. So if I can show you how to find the 5th house in your chart, then you'll be able to, in future years to come, you'll be able to see, well, Uranus is transiting Cancer. What house is that in my chart? And then you can look at the video for that. So I hope I'm making sense here. So let's explain what that is. So currently, just say you have Aries rising. Here we are, there's Aries rising on the horizon. It means that Uranus is finishing its transit, that's taken about 7 years. It's finishing its transit through the 1st house for you if you're Aries rising, and about to move into your 2nd house. Because in whole sign astrology, wherever your ascendant falls, whatever sign was rising on the horizon at the moment of your birth, that is your 1st house, or your rising sign. In this case, it would be Aries. And then we calculate each of the subsequent signs as being the ensuing houses. So 1st house would be Aries in this instance. 2nd house is Taurus. 3rd house is Gemini. 4th house is Cancer, and so on until you get around the horoscope with 12 signs and 12 houses. So that's how the system, the whole sign system, works in a nutshell, very basic nutshell there. But we're looking, we've already talked about a couple of the other houses, and now we're up to the 5th house. So what does this mean? Well, when Uranus moves into the sign of Taurus as the 5th house, it is going to mean that you are a Capricorn rising person. So for anybody with the sign of Capricorn rising on the horizon, you are about to experience a 7-year transit of Uranus to your 5th house. As you can see, there's the 1st house, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So the 5th house for Capricorn rising people will be what they are, where Uranus is for the next 7 years after March the 2nd in 2019. Now just say we're down the track another 7 years and Uranus moves into the sign of Gemini. Well, for Capricorn rising, that's going to be their 6th house, and they can expect to experience another 7-year transit to things pertaining to the 6th house in the horoscope. But if you were Aquarius rising and you were watching this video in about 7 years' time, and you're Aquarius rising, then this video is for you, because it will be the 5th house for anyone with Aquarius rising. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as you can see. So it depends where Uranus is. So you may need to go to one of the online calculators that show you where the planets currently are. If you're watching this in about 7 years, 14 years, however many years time out from 2019 when this recording was made. But once you know whereabouts Uranus currently is transiting, Cancer, Leo, wherever, and you know your rising sign, you can calculate what house that is for you. But for all of us at the moment, we're really looking ahead to Uranus transiting through the sign of Taurus, and what that's going to mean for us, and what that is going to bring for us in the next 7 years. So I just hope my little wheel stays. It tends to like to go for a walk, take a wander. So I hope that makes sense. Now, Uranus is the planet in general. I'll let that just sit where it wants to sit. Uranus is the planet in general of liberation, freedom, authenticity, and truth. So wherever he goes, that's what he wants to bring. He wants to shake things up so you are being authentic, so you are living your truth, so you are being real with wherever he happens to fall in the chart by transit. I'm not talking about natal placements here. That's a different subject entirely, although they can relate a little bit. But this is the transit, and so when he moves into a new sign, he wants to shake up that sign and bring some liberation, bring some authenticity, bring a little bit of rebelliousness, and bring some truth to what is going on there. So, for example, if you have Uranus well, let's use the 5th house as a great example, moving into the 5th house, which pertains to love affairs, and you're not being really true to yourself with regard to how you conduct yourself in love affairs, and you're living to please other people instead of pleasing yourself, that sort of thing. Well, Uranus is going to say, hey ho, no more of that, let's shake this up, let's be more authentic, no lies. Uranus won't have lies. So he is quite a fascinating planet to watch at work. So let's take a peek at what Uranus might bring for those of us who are Capricorn rising at the moment, but in the future, anyone experiencing Uranus transiting the 5th house. Well, the 5th house is a house that relates to a few key things: pleasure, fun, and joy, love affairs and romance, creativity. In fact, creativity is the ultimate word for the 5th house because it kind of encompasses everything else that the 5th house represents, and I'll explain that in a minute. So we've got pleasure, fun, and joy, romance and love affairs, creativity, and children. They're the 4 essential elements that are represented by the 5th house. It goes a lot deeper than that, but if we're keeping things at an easy to understand level, that's what we look at for the 5th house. And creativity pertains to all these things because it's a creative act to make a child. And of course, the 5th house relates to children. So if you're creating a child, well, it's fun, but it's also you are creating, making something. It's the ultimate act of creativity. Creative expression, so doing art, doing theatre, saying, look at me world, here I am, and this is me, and this is what I've got to offer the planet. This is creative expression through art, through acting, through singing, through music, through performing, through any type of self-expressive work is 5th house. Creativity. Also, it's very creative to participate in type of romance or love affairs. I mean, when you're dating someone, you come up with all sorts of wonderful ideas to please the other person, to have beautiful experiences together. You think of picnics with gourmet food, and you imagine fancy dates in hot air balloons and chicken and champagne breakfast, and your mind can go wild with the various options for how you can inject a bit of romance in your life. It's a very creative activity, as is anything to do with pleasure and fun and joy. You have to use your creative noggin to figure out, what's a great thing we can do this weekend that's really out of the ordinary, and we're not just sitting home and watching Netflix again. Let's think up something fun and pleasurable that we can do with other people or even by yourself. So again, creative thought processes involved for everything pertaining to the 5th house. So this is a time for enlivening your individuality and your self-expression, your creative self-expression. And it's a house of joy because, all those things are joyful. Generally speaking, children are very joyful and they bring fun and light into your life. Pleasurable experiences, romance, creativity. Sorry, I have a cold and I'm really struggling, so forgive me. Creativity in all its forms should be joyful, should be uplifting and inspiring and make you just delight in living. So when Uranus moves in here, he brings authenticity to that. He will enliven your individual self-expression and bring out your individuality more. He will give you some enthusiasm, lots of enthusiasm for joyous living and ways you can make your life and the way you're currently living it more joyous. He's going to give you an abundance of creativity. Now, usually abundance is associated with the planet Jupiter, but when Uranus moves into the 5th house, it's an injection of energy. It's an injection of like electricity. Uranus rules electricity, so light bulb type of moments. And you're going to get lots of light bulb moments for creativity. So suddenly you'll think, I could do this and that would enhance my business, or I could do that and I could create this wonderful work of art. And you know, you're going to get lots of ideas for creative projects that you can undertake. So it's not necessarily that Uranus will bring abundance, but it's just that he's going to give you the thought processes that are going to fuel this house, which is great. You're going to have originality in your mind and the way you think, particularly pertaining to how you have fun and how you interact with your lovers and your children and so on. There's going to be a uniqueness of expression in those areas. You're going to be very, very different, very kooky even, in the best possible way, with how you express love, express romance, how you relate to your children. This can be a really empowering transit if you have children, actually, because you might really connect beautifully with them. By, you know, children love creativity, they love eccentricity, and they, you know, they'll draw purple trees and, you know, birds that are, I don't know, all sorts of colors, and, you know, their mind is not limited by the usual parameters that our earthly realm puts on things. And so with Uranus here, that in you is going to be enhanced as well. So you will be able to relate to children so much better because of this. So, you know, if you have children and you're going through this transit, they stand to be blessed by lots of fun and joy and left of center experiences that they're going to have with you as a parent. So lucky kids. Now, the other thing with this transit is that you're not going to care what others think. This is the name of the game wherever Uranus goes. He doesn't care what other people think. That's not what his game's all about. He's not about respectability, which is probably something of a challenge for Capricorn rising people. They like their respectability. But he's not going to care about respectability or, you know, playing the game or being right or anything like that. He's going to care about truth and honesty and authenticity, which is such a key word for Uranus. So this is all pertaining to your self-expression. So, you know, you might start embracing your Salvador Dali-ness and not give a damn if everyone thinks you're kooky and you're crazy and you're walking down the street with your pet panther or whatever type of crazy kooky self-expression that you want to have. You are not going to care what others think. And so it's a very fertile time for creating masterful, wonderful, insightful and empowering works of art or displays of self-expression. So sorry, I'm just checking my notes. You're going to pursue whatever pleases you without regard for, oh, what will they say? What will they're going to disapprove? You know, you're just going to pursue those. It can be hobbies. Hobbies are seen by the 5th house. Hobbies or interests with abandon, with joy, with the pure love of what you do, rather than trying to, create a work of art that impresses the critics. That's not going to bother you. You're not going to give a damn about that. You're going to embrace your self-expression and do it for yourself, and the pure love of things, the pure joy of self-expression, the pure joy of whatever hobbies that you currently do. I love sewing. I love making my own clothes. And, if I was having this transit, then I probably would make all sorts of eccentric and wonderful costumes and clothes and not care two hoots about what people think. I'd wear my 1950s whatever dress down the street and not give a damn that everyone else is in tracksuit pants and moccasins. This is the kind of energy that Uranus brings to the 5th house. You invest in your hobbies in a way that's very almost nonchalant, like I don't give a damn what you think. I don't care what you think because I'm being me, I'm being true to myself. My self-expression is authentic and real. Very much the nature of Uranus through this house. You're going to have a clarity of ideas as well. So you're going to know, you're going to get much more of an idea of like what hobbies really, tick the boxes for you. You're going to get much more clarity around how you can make your self-expression more real, more true. Maybe for years you've been in a number of plays and they were, rehashing the old Hollywood musicals with the local theatre group or something, and then Uranus transits the 5th house and you get a clear perspective I want to write my own play, and it's going to be about this, and it's going to be set in modern times, it's going to incorporate modern music, and it's going to be really progressive. That's the nature of Uranus, very progressive, and you actually start to take on much more authenticity about what you want to do, and you're clear about that. It might have been in the back of your mind for years and years, but when Uranus transits here, there's a clarity about how to go about it, how to do it, and how to achieve your particular dreams pertaining to pleasure, fun, joy, hobbies, self-expression, children, and love, of course. So this is a transit where the joy of living will really be felt by you. You will feel invigorated, electrified, very much Uranus. You'll feel electrified, you'll feel empowered, you'll feel rejuvenated in regard to your joy for living, for life. I mean, a lot of the time we can get very bogged down in life and the mundane, ordinary realities, paying the bills, raising the kids, you know, going to work, developing a career, and we lose the joy that we need to flourish in life. Well, let me tell you, when Uranus transits the 5th house, we get that back. He brings us back. If we haven't been being real and authentic about what brings us joy and pleasure, Uranus says, hey ho, time for that to come back to you. So this is actually going to be a really great season for anyone with Capricorn rising, and they probably will need it after all the eclipse energy that we've been experiencing lately, and all the you know, the heavy duty Pluto-Saturn conjunction and so on that's playing out over the next few years in Capricorn. So it's quite timely. They're going to be reinvigorated by this, pardon me, transit of Uranus through their 5th house. Now, your outer circumstances, such as love affairs, such as playful events and entertainments that you might, you know, go to, they may not increase or change. So it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get more children or more lovers or anything like that. They may not increase or change, although this is actually rare though. Usually, and I'll just explain Uranus here for those of you who haven't tuned into a couple of the other videos. Uranus has his foot in both the physical reality that we live in and also in the spiritual realm, because he's the only planet that you can see occasionally with the naked eye, and therefore he pertains to the physical realm from time to time. And he's the only planet that you can see with the naked eye, but also most of the time you cannot see without a telescope. So he crosses the boundaries, he breaks boundaries. That's what Uranus does. And that being the case, sometimes he manifests in outer world reality. We can see him with the naked eye. And sometimes his realm is in the spiritual, the subconscious, the psyche. So he kind of works in both realms, which is a very rare, in fact, he's the only planet that kind of pertains to both of those worlds. He's a celestial planet, and he's also from time to time a visible planet. And you can notice that whenever you get goosebumps, you have a great idea about something and you, oh wow, your skin just prickles up with goosebumps. That is Uranus working through the mental, you know, intangible realms, giving you an idea, a light bulb moment, and it results in a bodily manifestation, goosebumps. So I love whenever that happens to me, because I know Uranus energy is flowing through me, working through me when that occurs. So what I was going to say is your outer circums may or may not change. It's rare that they won't change wherever Uranus transit. He brings a lot of physical world change. For some people, for one reason or another, they may not experience outer world change during this transit, but the change might be more inner. So it's rare to not have outer change, but if you do have outer change, you'll also get inner change. If there's no outer change, you're definitely going to have massive inner change. And this is going to be in the 5th house, pertaining to your perception. Sorry, I was just checking my notes. Pertaining to your perception of the world. You're going to find the world a much more stimulating place to be. You're going to be delighted by the little bugs crawling on the leaves, unless they're eating them and making a mess. But, you know, the little insects that you see in your garden, you're going to be mesmerized and stimulated and captivated by them. And equally, you're going to, you know, lie out under the stars at night and just be taken to, transported to another world. And, you know, the world is going to be captivating for you, mesmerizing for you, and you're going to take more delight in the little things that are around you all the time, but you may not have stopped to smell them, the roses, you know. So you're going to want to, and you will live life more fully and to the fullest with this transit. So an exciting time. You're going to embrace life with passion, embrace life with vigor, with enthusiasm. Yay, what a gorgeous transit to have, you know, especially, you know, if you've been through a rough period of life, and like this is a once in a lifetime transit. I probably should have said that from the outset. Uranus takes 84 years to go all the way around the horoscope. And so he spends 7 years in each sign, 7 years in a house in whole sign astrology. So we only get the shake-up, the invigoration, the enlivenment from Uranus once in a lifetime. It lasts 7 years, but it only happens once in a lifetime. So for anyone with Capricorn rising, this is going, pardon me, this is going to be the first time that they experience what it's like to have this realm of life totally turned upside down and invigorated and enlivened. So it's going to be a magical experience for anyone with Capricorn rising, or anyone who is experiencing Uranus transiting through the 5th house at some stage in their life. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity to be enlivened and to just, you know, be mesmerized and stimulated by the world like we're talking about. There may also be, you might find that feelings of being vulnerable or feeling oversensitive or a bit too precious about stuff, that just vanishes out of your life, and you just stop being too, you know, overly sensitive and triggered easily, and you stop feeling vulnerable, like everyone's out to get me or that sort of thing. That kind of leaves when you've got Uranus transiting the 5th house. The vulnerability goes, the oversensitivity goes, because suddenly you are empowered by your own self, your own sense of value, self-worth, your own creativity and creative expression, your own belief in yourself is enhanced and empowered and made real for you. Such a gorgeous transit, this one. Your originality and your genius-like creativity are going to be enhanced. We've actually already touched on that, so I won't go into that again. Now, getting to the heavy stuff, because, you know, it's not all sunshine, lollipops and rainbows. Uranus rules the sign of Aquarius here. And the thing is, Uranus rules Aquarius, and whenever we're finding a planet's what we call fall, the area of life or the house where it's in detriment, we look at the sign opposite its rulership. So Aquarius rules in modern astrology, Uranus rules Aquarius in modern astrology, and the sign opposite is Leo. Leo happens to be connected to the 5th house by association. They rule similar things. I mean, we look at Aries rising places Leo and as the 5th house. And this is the connective chart, if you want to call it that. You know, the qualities of Aries pertain to the qualities of the 1st house. The qualities of Taurus pertain to the qualities of the 2nd house in general. The qualities of Gemini pertain to the qualities of the 3rd house in general, and so on and so on. So when we've got Capricorn in this example rising, the 5th house, it's ruling things that are connected to the sign of Leo, even though Taurus happens to be the whole sign sign that is sitting as the 5th house. So, I mean, I don't want to go into a whole other, you know, stream of thought here, but what it looks like in this example is that Taurus things are what a Capricorn rising person will enjoy for pleasure, will find, you know, delight hobby-wise in. They will get a kick out of, you know, relating to their children, 5th house, in a very Taurian way. So 5th house things, which are generally connected to the sign of Leo in quality, will have the feeling of Taurus to them for a Capricorn rising person. So I hope I'm not confusing everybody there. So back to my point, Uranus is actually in a difficult house, a house of fall, when it's in the 5th house, because it rules the sign, and in fact it rules the house opposite, the 11th house. So that being the case, we do need to watch out for a few things when we're going through this transit. Yes, there's lots of lovely invigoration and setting free happening, but we need to watch out also for carelessness with others, for having an inflated ego, seen by this house. It's connected to ego, and you know, Uranus can really twist things up and change things around, and so our ego can come into play quite a bit when we go over the top with fifth house energy. So watch out for being careless with others, watch out for having an inflated ego, watch out for too much pleasure and indulgence, you know, throwing caution to the wind, having a lack of discretion. This can all manifest through this transit. You know, Uranus is the rebel, and he says, screw you, I don't care, you know, I'm going to go and, you know, eat decadent chocolate desserts every night for the next month because it's pleasurable, it's fun, I love it, it's joyful, and I don't care. And so you go and do that, and you throw caution to the wind, and of course you suffer for it in the long run. So that's an over-the-top example, but this is the nature of Uranus in the fifth house when it's manifesting the energy of fall. Now, I believe that there is shadow and light in every experience that we undertake in life, and every sign, every house, every planet has shadow and light qualities to it. That means the good and the bad, if you want to call them that. And so this is the shadow side of Uranus's transit through the fifth house that we just need knowledge to be aware of, to be able to navigate with wisdom. There can also be, with the shadow side, some erratic and inconsistent behavior with love affairs. So watch out for that, actually. If you're dating somebody who is having a Uranus in the fifth house transit, don't expect they're going to commit to you. This is very unlikely that that will be the case. The Uranus is stop, start kind of energy. Suddenly on, suddenly off. So your love affairs will reflect that. If you are having Uranus to the fifth house transit, you'll be in two minds about, do I want to date this person? No, I don't. Oh, there's somebody else. Maybe I might date them. You know, you're not going to be very committed. You're going to be a little bit more erratic. And that's fine, as long as you're honest and truthful and integrous with your partners as you experience them. You may attract partners who are like that as well. So it can either play out that you are the perpetrator of that sort of inconsistency, or you might, if you're having a Uranus to the fifth house transit, you might be attracting partners who are inconsistent. So it can play out internally or externally, either way. So you can, during this transit, you may attract partners who are a bit inconsistent and a bit they don't know where they're at, and long distance relationships can also manifest with this transit. Relationships that are on again, off again, for reasons that are outside of yourself, such as job takes you somewhere else, or you're living in separate countries. That sort of thing can actually manifest as well. Now, I say all this with a grain of salt, because if your personal chart overrides this, then you may not experience the on again, off again, or the erraticism that Uranus can bring to a love affair. If your personal chart, just say, had Saturn sitting in the fifth house in Taurus, well, Uranus's transit to there might just help let go of that Saturn blockage. So it can actually be a really good thing. So Saturn is there, sitting there in the fifth house, sending blockage and restriction to love affairs and children and so on. A Uranus transit to that Saturn in the fifth house would shake that up, set that free, create more truth and honesty and integrity, and let go of whatever is being held back there for you. So it would depend entirely on your natal chart whether this is going to play out in terms of erratic love relationships. And if you're in a marriage, well, of course that's not going to be the case. You're not going to be going and having lots of different non-committed relationships. Generally speaking, if you're in a happy marriage, I'm talking about. A short-term romance is generally what's more favoured if you're in a situation to pursue that with Uranus in the fifth house. There's very much an unpredictability about the love life with this transit as well. You can also attract partners who, you know, if we're not attracting partners who are non-committed, we can attract partners who are unusual, who are a bit quirky, the polaric opposite to ourselves even. You know, Uranus is very contrary. It doesn't do things by the book, and so we may have always dated somebody who is just like us, who loves to read crime novels and loves to, you know, spend nights in at home with a takeaway pizza or whatever, and suddenly we have someone come into our life who doesn't read books at all and is much more interested in going out clubbing, and you know, you fall for this person even though they're like the polaric opposite to who you are and what you like. You can be drawn to the polaric opposite with Uranus transiting the 5th house. So there's a love and romance that can come for committed partnerships too. So if you are in a committed, loving relationship, and you know, God bless you, I hope I hope you are, then this transit of Uranus to the 5th house, sorry, I'm just checking my notes, can bring more invigoration to your love life, more quirkiness, more eccentricity to your love and sex life. So this is fantastic transit actually for that. You might find that you get, you know, your partner gets more ideas for romantic, you know, dates that you can go on, and you start to maybe even break away a little bit from the restrictions that might be in place because of children in your life, and you're suddenly able to, you know, afford a babysitter and go out for a dinner more often, or go out to the movies, or start to actually enjoy the pleasures of life with your partner more. So this can actually be a very beneficial transit for people who are already in committed partnerships to invigorate their love life. So that's great. Now there is a more yeah, 5th house, it's not necessarily connected to sex the way the 8th house is or the 12th house is, but it is connected to pleasure, passion and romance. So sex does fit in that realm quite nicely. You need those sorts of things to enjoy a healthy sex life. So when Uranus transits the 5th house, you can have a more uninhibited, Uranus is uninhibited, unconventional, Uranus is unconventional, an experimental type of sex life over the next 7 years. You know, you might do things you never thought you'd do before. You might try stuff that had only you'd imagined in fantasy, and you get the courage now, not caring what people think, you get the courage now to sort of share with your partner, hey, maybe we could do this. And it's actually quite a beautiful period for romance and passion to be amped up and invigorated. So it's really good. You might also be drawn to gamble a little bit more when this transit occurs, but I would encourage you not to do so because it is unlikely that this will pay off or pay dividends for you. This is because Uranus is unpredictable. You know, I mean, gambling in itself is unpredictable. Speculation of any type is unpredictable. But when you've got Uranus there, it's, you know, it's tripling the odds, if you want to use that term, tripling the odds of it being, you know, an erratic outcome. So, you know, you're not going to actually, the likelihood of you achieving what you want out of, you know, investing in, if you want to call it investing, going into speculations of various risky ventures or tats lottos or, you know, betting on the horses or whatever, it's actually, you'll be drawn to do it more, but it's actually going to be less likely to be, you know, the odds are going to be much less in your favor because of Uranus's sort of hit and miss, on and off again kind of nature. So there can be disruptions with relationships with your children as well during this transit. Or you might find that your kids start behaving quite quirkily, quite eccentrically. They might develop a, you know, a love for some kind of really kooky art, you know, work that they follow this particular art guru person and get really inspired by them, but it's really left of center and left field. They might get interested in some sort of left field politics or belief system, or not likely to be belief systems with this house, sorry, but they might get more interested in some sort of left field politics. They might also get, you know, just develop some quirky habits. They might become interested in the psychic world, the spiritual world, or the occult, which Uranus is connected to those things. Uranus rules astrology, so they might get very much into astrology and start watching astrology videos or reading astrology books, that sort of stuff. They might simply decide to read up little kids' biographies. There's gorgeous little biography books you can get about famous men and women. They might really be intrigued by the quirky ones in those groups, like Nikola Tesla, who was very Uranian, and they might, develop an interest in that sort of thing, following famous Uranian type people of inspiration. This is another way that this can manifest. So some upheavals and changes with children. Now, I get a lot of people ask me if I can see whether or not they're going to have children in their chart. And Uranus transiting here, it may indicate that children, if you've been barren and have not been able to conceive, this, depending on the nature of your chart as a whole, because we have to take everything into context like I explained before with Saturn there, Uranus can shake things up. So if you have been stuck in a rut regarding children, like not being able to have them, might be the rut that you're stuck in, Uranus does have the potential to shake up that area of life and bring children into your life. So it is promising in that regard. But I do add a word of caution to that. If you know the rest of your chart, you'll be able to assess the various other triggers that you're going to need, because it will need more than just Uranus there to cause the change, to bring some invigoration, if you like, to the realm of having children or turning around the barrenness that you may have experienced. So you're going to need more than that. So I would encourage, if you are in a situation where children are an issue and you're wanting children and you haven't been able to have them, get a reading from a really good astrologer, somebody who knows about this sort of thing, and somebody who can see various other triggers that might be playing out in your chart as well. This would be one. Uranus will shake up whatever's not working in that area of life, and this is the house of children. So it can happen. But like I just spent 2 minutes explaining, you'll need other triggers that are very personal in your chart as well to combine with this transit in order to manifest something. It can be a time, depending on what's playing out in your own natal chart, but there is support for perhaps looking into something like IVF. At this time, Uranus can bring sudden, unexpected changes in life, and you might suddenly find IVF works for you. But like I just said, got to double check with the rest of your chart and make sure there's plenty of support from other factors in the chart as well. So that is Uranus transiting through the 5th house in a nutshell. And I do hope it's been a blessing for you, and I look forward to joining you next week, hopefully without a cold next time, and looking at Uranus's transit through the 6th house. God bless.